call the meeting to order, 6:30. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? All right, 4.0 discussion matters, 4.1 budget work session, 4.1.1 special education program.
So do
I'll go first and I'll bring up that slide.
Sure.
Why not?
Someone's got to start.
Yeah. Okay, find my place here. Do folks prefer I stand up? But I don't know if I can see anyone the rest of the table. From here.
Whatever you
Stand
want.
over here?
Okay, so same format we've used in the past. You can see 13-14 is for this current school year. The service plan is written for next year, 14-15. So at the top, we start with our EEE program for 3 to 5-year-olds. Broken down into school year costs as well as the summer program costs. Total cost for the school year is showing us a decrease over last year, a slight decrease in the amount of para-educator time in that program. And the significant decrease in the summer program for the preschoolers, based on the needs of the students who are in the program. We foresee a change in the service delivery model we used over the summer, not needing a classroom base for students with a teacher. Rather, we were providing more services for students on a one-on-one basis, sometimes in their daycare or home setting, wherever they were over the summer. So there was a sizable drop there in the cost of running the 6-week summer program for them. So overall, we're showing a decrease for EEE for next year. In the K-8 program, our staffing remains fairly consistent there for our professional staff and our total paraeducator time. Again, we break down into the summer costs for summer school, 1% increase. The professional services cost is based on the outside consultants that we need to provide services for our students. That's the consultants for the deaf and hard of hearing, for the blind and visually impaired, the I-team from UVM, and any other significant professional we need to come in and consult around a case that's challenging for us. So there's a bit of an increase there, 3.85%. OT, occupational therapy costs, is what we contract out from the district. We increased by a slight amount there, a half day per week, based on the needs of our students at this time. Then all other costs would be all the salary, benefits, adaptive equipment, and other services, communication, supplies, everything else that goes into running the program. And that shows, in comparison to the current budget, just over a 4% decrease over this current year. And the last two items are, again, are factored out of our costs. Psychologist is coming from the SU level as well. And then the SLP services shows an increase there, mostly due to SLP time being subtracted from the EEE population up to the school-age population. It's just a bit of a change there based on where our students are moving up to kindergarten. And I entertain any questions people have at this point.
So does the SLP budget assume the same, because we have job share, is that?
It's based on the equivalent of 2.0 FTE for SLPs. Right now, that is shared between 3 of us.
Okay.
And so it's, an accumulation and calculation based on expected salaries. I know there is one job share this year,
Okay.
which has been going on for a couple of years.
Thank you.
Connie, on your professional services cost,
Mhm.
you said that the student needs is going down. So if the student needs is going down, why is that going up if you have a less amount of kids possibly needing those services? Or maybe I'm just missing the...
No, I'm not saying the student needs are going down as far as professional services. Those are fairly consistent with this year. We have the same number of students who are receiving vision, hearing, and I-team consulting services. So that part is the same.
It's just the cost is going up.
Yeah, it goes up every year. Our actual number of students on IEPs is consistent.
Okay. And is there a breakdown somewhere of the 900,000, somewhere it says K-8 and all other costs? Is that broken down somewhere?
There are numerous line items. It's the salaries for all the special ed staff, the paras.
But is that broken down somewhere so somebody could look at that?
Is that available? Yeah. We look at it budget season, yeah.
Okay.
Board, have any questions for them?
Kristen, the one other piece of information that we'll
Yeah.
share, I'm not sure there are questions about it. It's usually just folks would like to see the comparative data across the SU. So this is how Charlotte compares with the other K-8s in the high school in terms of staffing, number of students, ratios, things like that. So I'll pass that around. But this part is not in your packet because we wanted to make sure it was the most updated information, so. And I have more copies if that's not one.
This comparison that you're talking about is strictly coincidental. All this stuff is governed by the individual needs of the students in the
Correct.
program. So
Yep.
this really doesn't have any significance, does it?
Well, it does because they pulled special ed into the SU so that it's more consistent, if you need.
Yeah, but as far as the students in this building, whatever the costs incurred are, depend on what the program is that's determined that these kids need, right?
That's correct. There is, though, always, what we're obligated to do is meet the needs of these individual students. So that is governed by what's written into their individual plan and their individualized needs. Where the discretion comes in is around service delivery models. Do we use a model that's heavy in paraprofessionals or heavy on professional staff? So that's where the comparative data starts to be informative because you can look at those models across the SU. So you're both accurate, though. It is driven by student need, and we are obligated to provide the services.
And are you suggesting that there's some latitude in the delivery models? Or is that not also determined by the people who are involved in dealing with these kids?
Both. Yes, there is latitude in how schools provide the services, but that is part of the service planning process that goes into developing these numbers. So Connie and her team looks at individual student needs and what staffing and supplies and contracted services are needed to provide those.
So to hear that in English, it's still these folks determining, the delivery model itself
Correct.
is part of what they evaluate
Absolutely.
for a particular student.
Yep. Can you hear us, Adora?
I can hear you, but was that Clyde?
Yes.
I probably am going to have a hard time hearing Clyde, but everyone else maybe I can hear.
Okay. I'll put the phone so it's sort of facing him a little bit.
You missed it, I'm finished.
Okay. So Dora, we're doing the special education budget right now. I have, we have a copy of all the documents for you to look at. Unfortunately, you don't have them in front of you right now, but.
I'll understand what I can for the conversation.
Okay. All right, is there anything else for special education? All right, thank you. 4.1.2 instructional program.
So tonight, we're going to share the instructional program, which includes the technology budget. And I'm just going to review our CCS mission statement. All of our work is driven by our mission statement, and as well as our budget preparation for tonight. I'm not going to read it to you, but we all know our mission statement, and that's a driver force for us.
You follow me a little bit? Okay. So just an outline of our process for formulating the proposals that you'll see tonight. This is not very different than we've done the last 2 years. Audrey and I undertook an analysis of the academic programming here at Charlotte, our multi-tiered systems of support, the enrollment projections, and the completed reports of the kindergarten study committee last year, and also the K through 8th grade configuration committees. We also created an electronic anonymous survey for staff to provide input into the budget. Those survey responses were shared electronically with members of the program council and reviewed and analyzed by Audrey and myself.
And this data, along with information gathered at the budget forum just before Thanksgiving, as well as our school board meetings, we were able to formulate our proposals, taking into account our analysis of as instructional leaders of the overall needs of instructional programs, as well as the infrastructure that supports it. Today, we actually share the budget presentation with staff at our staff meeting this afternoon and address any questions or concerns that they had. And prior to this meeting tonight, as well as the meeting with staff today, Greg and I also met privately with staff members who at this time are known to be impacted by the proposals we're presenting this evening.
So as well as our CCS mission statement, the work and the proposals are driven by our school action plans and professional development initiatives. And those include multi-tiered systems of instruction and support, I should say, multi-tiered systems of support, database decisions, positive behavior intervention as a sport, or PBIS, a school climate action plan, science action plan, math and literacy action plans.
The next two slides indicate it's a partial summary of budget reductions since 2006 over the past 7 years. These are the things that have been reduced. I'll give you an opportunity to look at that for a quick second.
So I wanted to just speak for a minute to something that's not in the presentation, but I think it's important to speak to, and that is you'll notice that there aren't any decision packets or proposals in the areas of O&M. And as we're approaching this meeting, I was thinking about that, and there's a little bit of wanted to make sure we had at least on the table the idea that the fact that there isn't a decision packet for particular capital needs that are present is not meant to indicate a lack of need for addressing some of the capital enhancements and capital repairs needed. But knowing that there's a board committee, facilities committee, working on that very subject, and that we'll have ongoing conversations with the board and the community, felt clumsy to be in parallel to that building decision packets around particular projects. So the strategy that we're taking with O&M is basically to take the formula from last year and roll it forward, keeping up with our maintenance goals, keeping up with our improvement goals in terms of painting surfaces, carpet replacement. Those are things that we can roll into that O&M budget and that we have been attending to over the last 3 or 4 years. So our the proposal is to roll that forward, but I want to make sure that that's not taken as sort of a nod that everything is hunky-dory with our physical plant, but that this other work is happening in parallel fashion. So didn't want to kind of let that go unsaid. So this slide is a little busy, but it indicates, and we wanted to get K-8 all on one slide. And it basically shows a current enrollment and class sizes against what are projected enrollment and class sizes. It also shows basically the team configurations. And you'll see our current class sizes in that fourth column. In the third column, you'll see projected class sizes as well as the projected number of teachers to provide instruction for those students. And then any change in staffing. On the far right, you'll see the CSSU average class sizes. So for elementary, pieces of note here, we're projecting 31 kindergarten students in the fall. Our projection was around there last year, and we got more than that. We're at 38 now. So that number should be taken for what it's worth. It's a projection. But either way, I think my recommendation is to have 2 teachers support that group of students. So we're expecting class sizes to be between 15 and probably what they are now, around 19. In first and second grade, I just want to bring your attention to this as it reflects the work of the configuration committee last year. And that is that in first and second grade, you'll notice a reduction of a primary teacher. So this year, we have 35 students in first grade, provided instruction by 2 teachers, and 53 students in second grade, supported by 3 teachers. Next year, we'll have a first grade of 38 students and a second grade of 37 students. That clearly points to an appropriate team size, instructional team of 4 teachers as opposed to 5. Again, this is playing out as it was projected last year. And so that indicates a 1.0 reduction of a primary teacher due to that drop in enrollment size at the 1-2 level. At the 3-4 level, I'm happy to say that that little configuration turbulence that we went through last year is playing out the way we had hoped. Even though we got 7 or 8 new second graders this year over the summer, that's going to actually set up nicely for the third grade to be supported next year with a 3-teacher team, supporting those 56 kids with about 19 kids in a class. And the fourth grade looping with their current, the third grade teachers will move ahead to loop with their current 2 classes. So again, class size is around 18, 19, and the teams stay consistent, and we were able to keep our looping. I'll hand it over to Audrey.
Sure. When looking at the middle level class size averages, we look at instructional groupings, not like associated with a classroom teacher as we do in K-4. So for example, in grade 5, there are 2 instructional groupings, and students move or travel throughout the day in their instructional group for all the content area as well as expressive arts, world language. So we're not looking at a tied to a teacher, it's really instructional groupings. And if you look at 6th and 7th grade, there are 3 instructional groupings now. For 5th grade, we currently have 50 students with 2 instructional groups. We're projected to have 54 students next year, and based on that high number, I'm recommending 2 instructional groups. However, I did meet with the current 5th grade teachers as well as the special education staff to look at our needs to determine should we be doing 3 instructional groupings next year. Based on that meeting and information that they provided, we decided that we didn't want to do 3 instructional groupings. We wanted to stay with 2, but make a recommendation to have para-educator support within each classroom. So if you notice, the projected class size is 27. We know that up front, and I'm going to recommend later on a decision packet for 2.0 FTE general education paras. At 6th grade, we currently have 3 instructional groupings with a class size of 46. We're projected to have 52 students next year. And based on that, I've actually given you 2 pieces of information of what the projected class size is based on the decision that will be made on the configuration proposal. So if we stayed with 3 instructional groupings, we would have a class size of 17.3. If we went with the recommendation of the configuration proposal, we would have a class size of 26 with 2 instructional groupings. And if we look at 7th and 8th grade, the current enrollment is combined a total of 97, but there is 3 instructional groups per grade. The current class size is about 16.2. Again, if we move to 2 instructional groupings, the class size would be 23.5. If we remained in 3 instructional groupings per grade, the class size would be about 15.7 or 16 per class.
So just I want to make a note that some learning happened as a result of last year and some disagreement around some numbers. So Audrey and I were very careful about looking at Bill Smith's projections, also looking at the actual number of students in seats this year, and comparing those 2 numbers. On the projected column, we use the higher of those 2 numbers, the greater of those 2 numbers. So if we had 40 students in seats in 2nd grade, even though Bill Smith's projecting 38 in 3rd grade next year, we're going to go with the higher number.
We did the same at the middle level.
Since you're recommending the 2 paras, like fifth, you saying that you don't have any additional para needs with larger instructional groups, if that's what the board does at 6-8?
Yes, I would. If you recall from the presentation I gave last year on the configuration proposal, if our totals reach 27, I again would make a recommendation to have paraeducator support. And we'll monitor that closely this year and into the summer, as I've done in the previous years.
Okay. And is there, I feel like for SQS, what is it sort of varies dependent on subject, right?
It's an average of, it's a 24 at the middle level. It's 4th to,
for
yeah.
LA, or it's like LA was sort of different than all the
That's
others,
for the high
right?
school.
That's high school.
Oh, for high school.
High school, yep.
For 4th through 8th grade, I want to say the average, it's an average of 24 students. Eric, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you just kind of go over the instructional grouping thing again in terms of how many teachers that represents?
Sure. Well, it would be 3 instructional. I'll do 5th grade because it's easier. There's 2 instructional groups. So Mary Morosky teaches language arts and social studies. So she has an instructional group where she teaches that group, and they travel the day. So they'll have her for language arts, and then another part of the day they'll have her for social studies. Dave Baird teaches math, so he teaches math and then science. So the kids will travel to him 1 period for math and 1 period for science. So they travel with them. So there's 2 teachers that split the content area.
Right, I was thinking more of the 6th and the 7, 8 grades.
So there's 3 instructional groupings. So there's like an A group, a B group, and a C group. And they stay together and travel throughout the day with that group to all their content areas, including their expressive arts.
Right, I was trying to correlate that with the number of actual FTEs, right? So if you're saying you're cutting an instructional
It's an
group,
equivalent of 2-point FTEs based on their licensure and the content that they teach. So it's not 2 full teachers. It could be pieces of teachers based on what they teach.
But so to go from 2 to 3 represents 2 FTEs?
It's equivalent of 2 FTEs. It's the instructional groupings if we went from 2 to 3.
Or I should say 3 to 2. But
Yeah, 3 to 2. It's the equivalent of 2.0. I'm not going to
Okay.
reduce.
So
It
that's-
could
I
be
just-
pieces of a world language
Got it.
teacher, pieces of a science teacher, pieces of a math teacher, based on their licensure and what I need as far as to meet the instructional groupings needs.
Yeah, because right now, if the kids all go to, all the 5th graders, there's only 2 groups going to Spanish or French, but 3 groups of kids from 6th grade, 3 from 7th, 3 from 8th. So if they all go down to 2, that's just less.
There may be a reduction in the world language because I'm
Right.
only going to have 2 sections at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade versus 3.
And it
Right.
affects
So it's
everything. It
partial
affects
reduction,
art,
yeah.
affects, it's just bigger
It
groups
affects all
going
the
to
EAs,
every.
yep.
I was just trying to reconcile that with the next page, right? So
The next page.
in other words, this looked like you, between 6th grade and the 7, 8 grade, are you, I'm not sure, right, but are you recommending that they go from, both of those from 3 to 2?
Yes.
So would that be 4 FTEs?
No, it'd be equivalent of 2.0 FTEs based on who teaches literacy.
Oh, so it's, okay, because that was my
Yeah.
question, was it, I'm saying in a grade level, if you cut a group from 3 to 2, that's only 1 teacher. And if you do it again in another grade level, that's one more teacher FTE?
No, it's
it
not,
2 per-
it could be several people that are affected by that because it's based on people's licensure at the middle level.
No, I get that it's not literally 1 person, it
Uh-huh.
might be parts of a person that add up to 1 FTE.
Right. Mhm.
I was trying to understand, in the 6th grade, if you went from 3 to 2, is that 1 FTE or 2 FTEs?
It could be one. It could be one FTE. Yeah, actually, I see what you're saying now. It would be one FTE. Yes.
Okay, and then same thing for the 7th and 8th grade?
Yes, it
That
would
3 to
be
2?
an equivalent of one FTE.
So
an
the total
equivalent
is
of-
2, which is what I'm
Yes.
looking at in the next
Yeah.
page.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry about that.
No, it's my own problem.
It's complex at the middle level, that whole instructional grouping piece.
Any other questions about this slide before we move on? A lot of information. There's the special ed, so we already covered that. There's a technology budget. This looks a little different than how we've shown it the last couple of years. We decided to include decision packets on this slide as well as on the decision packet slide. But if you look at the first 5 lines, that's the view that was normally displayed, and essentially you got the last 3 years of the technology budget shown there. And if you look from last year to this year, you're looking at, in this first 5 lines, essentially a basically flat budget. Included in that equipment line, which is the biggest line, that $45,000 line, that includes an expected replacement of the 5th grade mobile lab, so a complete new set of laptops for a mobile lab in the 5th grade, and that was expected as part of our replacement cycle. It also includes some laptop computers that were expected to be deployed to certain staff in the building, as well as about $10,000 of infrastructure maintenance. Also includes funds for approximately 15 desktop computers, again, replacement cycle, as well as 10 iPads. We've been buying 10 iPads a year for the last 3 or 4 years. That will make a total of 30 iPads available for teachers to sign out of the library. The next line, you'll notice software repairs and supplies have all been kept flat. And without the decision package, you're essentially looking at an even budget from last year. There are 3 decision packets. I might as well cover them here, and then you'll see them appear later in the presentation. One is a decision packet for 18 additional laptop computers, just the computers, not a cart. We're factoring in about $800 for a laptop computer. And these 18 laptops are going to be deployed in classrooms to supplement the mobile labs to make sure there are enough computers for every student in every classroom. So we're not swapping computers back and forth across the hallway, stealing one from one cart, unplugging and replugging, and we found that not to be a successful model, and it escalates repair costs, and students and teachers don't have fair, equitable access to technology they need. So essentially, we're supplementing hardware in classrooms to make sure there are enough for the largest classes, and that would be 5th grade predominantly, but also there'll be some deployment of those laptops in the 6th through 8th grade. The second decision packet is there's another laptop cart that was slated to be replaced next year. That's in the 7th and 8th grade team. Those laptops are in worse shape than we had hoped and really need to be replaced now. By replacing those laptops this year, we are buying ourselves a year. We don't have to replace a cart next year as part of our replacement cycle. Yes, Eric?
So the cart exists, you're just replacing the computers? Or do you have to replace the?
Yeah, we're not sure about the cart. We have to actually investigate to see if the cart we have will, because the cart that this one's replacing is netbooks. The netbooks are smaller, these are larger. We want to make sure that the cart will accommodate the 20 laptop machines. The cart's about $1,500.
Yeah, I mean, from this, it would imply a $2,000. Is it literally just a
It's
cart with
yeah.
wheels, or is there
Yeah,
some
they're-
fancy?
They're pretty fancy. They better be for what they cost. They're metal. They're on big casters. When you open them up, they're lockable. You open them up, they have a shelf for each laptops, and they're wired so every laptop can be plugged in appropriately. They're sturdy. You can put a printer on top of the cart if you want to network a printer to that cart. So we've been creative with carts. We've got hand-me-downs from CVU. We bought one from Williston. So we've gotten them for less than $2,000, but if you were to buy one out of a catalog, they're pricey. And the third decision packet should have a familiar ring from last year. Again, requesting that we invest in a new laptop, a new mobile computer lab to be deployed in the 3rd and 4th grade classrooms. Those decision packets add up to about $50,000, and that total on the bottom would be the subtotal on top with the addition of the 3 combined decision packets.
So, does this mean we're not, I thought we were maybe gonna get some donated or repurposed laptops?
Yep.
That's not working
No,
out?
It is, Kristen, it is working out. We are proud to say and pleased to say we have a working laptop cart that we are using with a 4th grade team that's completely a donated setup. These are 7-year-old Dell laptops that were basically obsoleted, and we've invested a modest amount of money per machine, about $200 per machine, to run on our system reliably. And again, they're working. I don't see it as a sustainable or reliable solution to support the 3rd and 4th grade teams going forward. I would not want to put my eggs in that basket in terms of the students having reliable access. But we are thrilled and grateful to have that resource this year. Yes?
I want to make, I'm not sure I heard you right.
Sure.
That first decision packet, the additional laptops
Yes.
to go permanently into classrooms. You were saying that that's to make sure that everybody has one in their classroom?
Yes. So
how do the mobile carts fit into that equation?
So, jump in if I say anything. So let's say the fifth grade team has a cart to share. They have one cart with 20 computers on it. So Mary Morosky and David Baird planfully share that cart back and forth. It has 20 machines on it. They've got 27 kids in their room. So the idea is, these rooms have 4 desktop computers in them. What we're going to do is we're going to take those desktops out. They're on the window. You've probably seen them. And we're going to deploy them elsewhere in the school. And we're going to line up the 7 laptops on that desktop area and have them be sort of stationary machines, but that can be obviously picked up and moved. So every classroom, those 2 classrooms will have 7 or 8 of those new laptops on the windowsills, plus the 20 on the cart that will go back and forth in the hallway. And then that accounts for 15 of those 18 machines, and then the other 3 are headed up to the 6, 7, 8 rooms
7th and 8th room.
to deploy, just to make sure that, again, with the cart, plus the desktop machines, plus this additional machine or 2, when a class of 24 walks in the room, everybody's got one-on-one ability. That answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're
May
welcome.
I ask you a question about software?
Sure.
The expense every year, are those upgrades or are those new programs we're buying, or?
A little bit of both. Mostly programs that are time-tested and used by teachers that require subscriptions or licensing agreements that are renewed every year. We do go through the list line by line and say, are teachers still using this? Is it still valuable? Is it still relevant? Is there a better open source tool? So we go line by line, but most of those, Eric, with the exception of a couple, are the same that we've been, and then what happens is the oldest ones sort of become irrelevant and they're replaced by another one. But they're mostly renewals.
Okay, and I don't know if this is the right time for this question, you can stop me if it's not. Co-writer, I think that's a piece of software we have.
Yes.
I was sort of surprised to learn what that does, and I was curious to get your opinion on the educational value of that?
Co-writer has value for some of our struggling writers. It's a word for the benefit of the other people in the room. It's an application that you can turn on a computer when you're composing text, and it can read highlighted text to the students, and as the student types, it's also a word prediction software. So if you type a few letters as if you were texting or sending an email as some soft pieces of software, it will shoot out a list of words that the student might be trying to create, that the student can then click on to finish the word without composing the rest of the word. You can also, co-writer allows a teacher to take and create a word bank for a particular topic. So if you're going to the Marine Museum and you know kids are going to be writing papers about their visit to the Marine Museum, the aquarium, I guess it's called, in some worlds, you can find a word bank about an aquarium or highlight text from a piece about an aquarium, paste it into co-writer, and then that becomes a word bank that shows up for the kids as they're writing their piece. So it's word prediction, text to voice, it'll read back what the kids have written, and then it provides the ability to, I'm not an expert on that piece of software, but we have found it useful for some of our kids.
So you say it's just for people who are struggling? Or it just seems like it would be a deterrent to anyone trying to learn how to spell or form thoughts on their own.
Right. I think the way we're using it as a supplemental tool for some kids that we deem it appropriate, I think it's appropriate.
Thanks.
I can understand the logic behind concerns around the word prediction.
Adora, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, just pipe in anytime you have a question or comment.
Okay, thanks. None so far.
Okay.
Any other questions about this slide?
What kind of computers do you get that are $800 per laptop?
So Mike Canfer is what's his title?
Technology Director Award.
Technology Director for the SU. And he is our go-to guy along with our IT person, Nancy Myrick. We say, here's what, we need a laptop. We're going to buy a bunch of them. Spec us out the best machine you can. And they go out and they look for a really reliable machine for the best deal that's going to hold up, that we're going to be able to repair, that aligns with our systems. So we've had luck over the last couple of years with a particular Dell model that's been really nice, but those get spec'd out by those guys and they give us back a quote, and then we might ask a couple of questions and then we go with it that way. We'll leave it to those guys.
So it's put out for bid, basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the group learns each year. They reflect on what happened last year, what's happened in the field with the units, and if we need to change what we're getting either spec-wise or quality-wise, they push that envelope and do it every May and June.
Yep.
What's sort of the replacement cycle for a typical laptop?
Laptops we view, I believe it's a 3-year replacement cycle on the laptops. In the 4th year, we'll want to replace them. Desktops, I think we're looking more at a 5-year replacement cycle. Obviously, we'll get more out of them if we can, but that's what we should be budgeting for.
And the machines that you found needed to be replaced a year earlier than you anticipated, do you have an explanation? I mean, was it the machine? I mean,
It was netbooks, right?
I believe those are netbooks, and they just didn't hold up the way we hoped they would.
They're used a lot at the middle level, at 7th and 8th grade. They're used daily by several teachers. So
I don't have detail, Clyde, about what the particular failings are.
But I think when initially invested, it was a cheaper investment than
To go with the
standard
netbooks.
laptops, right? Netbooks were cheaper.
Yeah.
We've pretty much decided not to buy another netbook. I mean, that technology is becoming passe, pretty much. Okay, so this is the slide that includes the proposals for budget reductions. The first one is the 1.0 FTE reduction in primary classroom teacher. Again, this is due to the numbers I showed you on the earlier slide. Are there any questions about that one? So as a result of a reduction in a class, that's one less class that goes through the expressive arts cycle. So phys ed, art, music, in the case of K4, Spanish. So Audrey and I consider it part of our responsibility to look at those schedules of all those expressive arts teachers, look at the schedules the way they are now, take out that one class and analyze the staffing and say, is that still appropriate level staffing with that one class now taken out of that? Now, so what we did when that analysis was complete, it indicated an appropriate recommendation to reduce art by 0.1, which is roughly half a day. And with that 0.1 reduction, we're still able to provide art 15 minutes a week for, obviously, all the classes at Charlotte Central School.
The next one, I'm recommending that the board support the reduction of the 2.0 FTE middle level content area teachers based on the work of the configuration committee from last year. As you recall, Bill Smith's projections over the next 10 years, we're going to be down by 50 students. In addition, if you look at our current class size in comparison with SQS and the supervisory union class averages for middle level, we are much lower than what the SQS and the supervisory union has at the middle level. So I'm recommending that reduction. With that reduction, we will be looking at reductions in expressive arts as well as world language. I don't have a dollar amount at this time. When we start putting together the master schedule for next year, and if the board approves that recommendation, I'll be looking at the needs and for the instructional groups going from 3 to 2, and at that point I will know what those reductions are.
So the operations and maintenance savings. So we have a certain level of staffing in the baseline budget. Due to a retirement and some conversation with Dave and planning with Dave LeBlanc, we have decided to enter into next year with a slightly lower staffing level than reflected in the baseline. There's a little bit of an unknown in terms of how much we'll need to rely on some part-time staff, and we're going to do a wait and see and give it a try. But we feel like $10,000 is a fairly conservative estimate as to savings we'll realize as a result of slightly reduced staffing in operations and maintenance. And again, no one was reduced. Because of the retirement, we shifted some staffing around and didn't backfill all of it. Any questions about that?
Based on what Dave had to say when we talked about facilities.
Yep.
And everybody's daily schedule and time commitments, I'm a little confused about how we can save money on that. I realize we're talking about a separate thing from any building project. We're talking about daily maintenance.
Yep, exactly.
But again, to listen to what Dave said, it didn't sound as though anybody had any time to spare. So it appears to me to be a disconnect of some sort. So clearly I don't understand something.
Okay, I guess I'm having trouble recalling anything that Dave might have said that would have contradicted the fact that we could operate with a slight reduction in maintenance and custodial staff. I remember a lot of comments about maintenance needs of the building and some disrepair, but is there a particular comment that you're thinking of, Clyde?
First one that comes to mind is the various activities that were required around supporting the boilers and the problems that they're having with the boilers. I mean, for that activity alone, there was a huge maintenance schedule. But I just find it difficult to believe that if we analyzed everybody's daily activities, based on what we're repeatedly told about the maintenance needs of the building, it just doesn't seem consistent with what we've heard in the past.
Okay, I guess I would say that I wouldn't necessarily agree that they're inconsistent in terms of the maintenance needs and our ability to take care of the daily form and function of doing the custodial and maintenance needs in the building with slightly fewer staff. And this is something that Dave and I talked about, and we think we're going to give it a try. We have someone in the wings willing to support part-time that's somewhat flexible in terms of can work more or less as the needs come up. We expect to use that person more in the summer and on vacations to do some of the heavier things like floors and those bigger things.
I wonder if part of that is that, you know, we hear about certain percentage of the O&M is devoted to our neediest parts of the building, but maybe that's, you know, the cost of the things we need to update them as opposed to staff, so maybe the materials needed to do that. Because I do recall that, like that they're kind of stretched, so maybe that's the disconnect.
Don't ask me, that's what these folks are for.
Any other questions? Oh, so taken together, again, this number, it's hard to put a lot of stock in it because it doesn't include some other pieces that are yet to be determined. But just taking the identified amounts together, you're looking at about $223,000 in potential reductions.
There's some other decision packets, as mentioned before, when looking at the slide for class averages and class sizes. I'm recommending that we add 2.0 FTE non-intensive classroom pairs for 5th grade to support the larger class size coming in for 5th grade next year.
So I am happy again to recommend, I guess happy is the wrong word, but I wanted to again recommend that we at Charlotte Central School move to a full day kindergarten program. And that price hasn't changed much since last year. It's $32,000 to shift our .82 kindergarten staff, 2 of those people, to full-time. And I could get further into this here, or we could save that for a later time, but I feel strongly that we should be moving to a full-day kindergarten model here at Charlotte. These next
Can we
three.
go back just one spot,
Yeah.
the first one, the 2.0. So does that assume that a pair is just with an instructional grouping, so that pair is going to Spanish, to
They're gonna-
art, to PE?
Kristen, they're going to stay with the class the
With the
entire, they're
class.
going to travel the whole day. So whether it's language arts, science, social studies, expressive arts, PE, everything. Mhm.
So this basically is almost exactly equal to 1 FTE teacher.
Yes, just knowing the figures we got from HR, the pair figures include someone who would have benefits in a family benefit package. So they are slightly high, but that's what we were given as an estimate to use if we hired 2 pairs, yes.
So sort of given that they cancel each other out in terms of the 5th grade, you're down a teacher and up 2 pairs and it's the same cost. Is that, I guess if you, cost being equal, you'd rather have 2 teachers and 2 pairs than 3 teachers, or?
We discussed it. The 5th grade teachers discussed, do we want to go to 3 instructional groupings versus 2, and they wanted to have the 2 groupings and have the pair support. And we had a meeting and discussed that and went back and forth about it, and again felt they wanted to keep it that way. They liked the model, the way it's working, and feel with the extra support in the classroom that it's going to work for next year. So yes.
These next 3 lines are just repeats of the tech decision packets that I've already reviewed, so I won't review those again. On the bottom of the slide.
Sure. Greg and I would like to support the nurse to be increased to a 1.0 FTE. She currently is a 0.9 FTE. Based on our current enrollment and the needs of our population and all the responsibilities that she has on her plate, we believe we need a full-time person. And Greg and I actually were just discussing this a few weeks ago. I mean, there are times that our clerical staff, as well as ourselves this year, have spent more time where we, because the nurse isn't there in the times when she doesn't come in, she comes in at 8:45, he and I, or our clerical staff, is taking care of needs in the medical room. So we really believe we need a full-time nurse.
Moving ahead to the next slide. Again, some of these numbers, this is another number that was arrived at from a projection from Human Resources. So they used some fairly standardized assumptions. So that number may come in higher or lower than what it ends up costing. The proposal is for a 60% reading and language arts specialist and teacher. And this licensed teacher would support students and teachers by providing direct Tier 2 interventions, as well as planning and programming for Tier 2 supports. And the rationale behind this, just to add to that a little bit, is that as we are implementing the initiatives that we're working on, the Common Core initiatives, the focus on informational text, raising rigor in terms of text complexity, our standards of practice and readers and writers workshop, the demands on our 1.0 literacy coordinator are at levels that are making it quite challenging for her to do the things that we'd like her to spend more time on. Direct contact with students, direct coaching opportunities with teachers, providing support in the classroom. We're finding that that's more and more challenging to do as we're implementing the professional development and instructional shifts with the Common Core. So this 60% position would be a licensed position to support across grade levels in the area of reading expertise.
But it's just for Tier 2, which means for the weaker, helping the weaker students? Or?
Correct. Tier 2 interventions are considered that middle tier intervention, and it's for the more fragile readers.
So, but a 0.6 is the same price as the full reduction of a 1.0 in the primary? Is that just based on what HR recommends you're budgeting?
Yes, and some of that is, well, if somebody's RIF, they may have recall rights, or they're assuming a certain certain schooling level and a certain benefits package. So again, that number is a number, but
it sort of implies like 128 grand for a 1.0.
It does.
And it just, when you think about
You're
getting
right.
rid of, if we're gonna get rid of does it make more sense not to have bigger class? I don't know.
Again, I don't know, Elaine, if you have anything to add, but I would be careful not to
Yeah.
pay too much attention
I
to
mean, this
that.
assumes that the most senior teacher is the person who takes the reading language arts specialist. So your most expensive teacher ends up taking this job, and your least experienced, least expensive teacher is the one that is reduced.
And of course, hypothetically, that most senior teacher
It has a family plan.
and has the appropriate licensure to do this position.
Right.
I thought earlier in the previous presentation, they indicated that the number of kids on IEPs hadn't changed. So this, just so I'm clear, the Tier 2 doesn't go down to that demographic, is just for general classroom support for kids who need a little extra help?
Correct. The way systemically it should work is the better your Tier 1 and Tier 2 interventions are, and the earlier you're identifying students who are fragile, and the earlier you're intervening, the closer you're monitoring those kids and adjusting your intervention, the fewer students you'll have on IEPs in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And that's really, really our target. The earlier we intervene and the more targeted we can be with our interventions, the better. Which also ties into the full-day kindergarten rationale.
All right, Dora has a question? Go ahead.
It's not about that line item, though. Is there anyone else who has a question about that line item?
Why don't you just go ahead?
Okay, so my question is, and maybe you said this, Greg, but are these decision tax items in priority order?
Yes, Audrey and I did our best to prioritize these, correct.
The best that we
Okay,
could.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions on that item? Okay, I'll go up to the next proposal. I'm pleased to support the proposal for an assistant cross-country coach. This year, we opened up cross-country to 5th graders, and the program did very well. We're anticipating a larger number of students to participate next year as a result of opening the program up. Currently, the coach to student athlete ratio is double what we have for soccer and basketball. And so based on the number of students, we need some more support for the current coach for the cross-country team.
And what are the numbers?
We currently, this year, we had 38 students participate. Based on feedback the coach is receiving from incoming 4th graders knowing they could participate next year, it's probably going to be 40 or more.
So this also may have a familiar ring to it from last year. We're trying to increase our library of early reading leveled books. These are, again, a collection of books that can be shared mostly in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. And the more titles and multiple copies of titles that you have at your disposal to do small group guided reading with, the better. So we're finding that our library in that area is, I don't mean this library, I mean our classroom libraries and our STARS room library, that's our intervention, our literacy intervention library, is lacking in this area. We have been working on it each year, trying to add more titles, but this $3,000 would go a long way to give that a great boost.
The next proposal is to have substitutes for best practices and professional development. As you know, for the past 2 years, we've been working with our a math consultant to do our best practices in math in the math studio. The studio requires substitute teachers for the teachers to attend the studio day. So we currently have 3 studios. 2 are in their 2nd year, and 1 is in its 1st year. Our K-2 studio is in its 1st year. Is that correct?
K2 is in its 2nd,
3-5 is in its 1st year. So we need to have the pair of the subs to support our work as we continue next year. So we have $4,300 that we'd like to support that and continue our work in that area. The next one is also mine. I would like to have you support an addition to our athletic equipment and supply line. We have not, with the exception of one of our teams, our B-side soccer team, we have not bought or purchased uniforms for the teams in 6 years or more. And our cross-country team uniforms are almost embarrassing. I've gone to some of the meets and the parents are saying, Audrey, you need to do something about this year. But we'd like to create a replacement cycle. Right now, our budget line item does not have enough to support that. So we'll create a cycle with the athletic director and make sure that we're bringing in new uniforms over the next 5 years with this money. And is that the last one?
Science
and the last one. I know this has been on for the past 2 years. I would love if we could have a line item for our science supplies that support our inquiry science and our action plan. As we move to the NGSS, the new science standards, we will continue to need replenishments of supplies. And so we'd like to have $2,000, and it would help support K-8 science instruction.
Just 2 other points for your consideration. Bob, jump in if I say anything that sounds wacky. But there was an assumption in the baseline for increase in expenses for healthcare. And that assumption was based on a 15% increase. This, although unofficial, the word is that that's going to come in closer to a 5%. And if that, we expect to become official in the next week or so. If that does play out, that is a plus swing in the neighborhood of $79,000. And another smaller piece is an assumption in the baseline around the bus contract. Due to a recent adjustment to the contract for next year, the bus contract's actually going to cost $5,000 and change less than what is in the baseline. So that again is those 2 things put together, you're looking at about an $84,000 positive swing. That's not reflected on any of these slides. That sound about right, Bob?
Did well.
Thanks. Well, any questions? So
Jill?
all those.
Jill has a
Sorry.
question.
How does this reflect teacher negotiations? Because we haven't heard anything about them, so if there's an increase in their negotiations, does that add on top of this, correct?
Do one of you want to take that, maybe Elaine or Bob, or?
It's baked into the numbers here. We've already anticipated an expected amount, and it's in these numbers. And we can't really share more than that because we're in negotiations.
So my question is, so basically, it's not going to be a surprise to the
It will-
public that, you know, all of a sudden that we're going to have to pay more than this, what we're
Hopefully
asking?
not.
Hopefully
No, 'cause
not?
Whatever,
Hopefully
whatever
not.
budget we pass, you're stuck with that, and if, you know, if you don't have enough money in the budget, you have to cut.
Right. The other
Okay.
thing I would share is that by agreement with the association, January 1st, both sides can share what their proposals were. So that's going to be a helpful piece for the public this time around.
And is that coming to a close soon, do you know, or?
I don't know, it's going well.
Okay, good.
We've had several meetings and we feel they're going very well, but
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
So, our baseline was up 3.3 our original baseline, is that right?
3.35.
3.35? So we're probably still at around 3 without the, you know, other
Any
additional
changes, yeah.
things, yeah.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong with the math, if you include all the healthcare and the other, so we're about a wash, so we're right back on the same number? Is that what?
When you mean with the decision packets?
Yes.
Well, if we take all the reductions and all the
More
decision
wash.
packs, we're up, you know, because it's reductions, proposed reductions are 223, proposed decision packets are 245, so that would be another 23. So yeah, it's really only, if those other savings come in, it would only be a savings of 61,000.
Okay.
Better than baseline.
Right.
Yep.
And what were we up last year? Under. Up 10%?
Our budget last year was up 10%.
I can't remember numbers like that from the current year, let alone
Yeah.
a year ago with 7, so.
You're asking
I
what
don't
the
think so.
difference, or the
Yeah, I don't
percentage
think it was
increase
that
last year
much.
was?
you had to split it. No, the 2-vote piece was about more.
5.6%.
Yeah, 5.6.
Okay.
You
were.
You're hired.
Yes, taxes were.
They triggered 2-vote last year because their costs were a certain amount above the state average the year before, and their increase was greater than the cost of living plus 1.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Well, so I guess, sorry, Laura. Why don't you go ahead?
Oh, you said you're all set?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Mark.
Looking through all this over the next week or so, if I have questions, should I funnel them through you or directly
Yeah,
to administration?
let's funnel them through me and then I'll get them over to,
That's the best
yeah,
way.
that's a good way.
Are there any items that the board wishes Audrey and I to gather more detail on for the next meeting?
So I had one quick question that came to mind. I was thinking about if we go to full-day kindergarten, this is the cost here to increase the current teachers to full-time. Is there an additional piece to increase expressive arts type other budget items?
Great question. There will not be an impact on expressive arts. That won't be the absorbable. So the only thing I can think of that we do differently, because our kindergartners still get, even though they're only here half a day, and this is
Right.
part of the challenge.
Right.
They still get art, they still get music.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
glad to say, PE, all those things. So that's happening now. So it just will give us more of the day to work those things in. We have music once a week.
Yeah.
And when we start in January, we add a second time of the week. So if we were full day, we'd have music twice a week for the Ks. But we can work that in without additional costs.
Any other questions? Anyone out there?
Well, I just wanted to say for a little information.
Do you want, can you just say your name just so,
Sure.
just for the record? You don't have to stand,
Oh,
but
good.
just so that RETN knows who you are.
Yes, I'm Alice Tracer. I'm the art teacher, and I thought I would come tonight. I'm into my 3rd year teaching here, and I'm really glad to say that I'm here at Charlotte. I love the kids, and I enjoy the staff. And I just wanted to, I have talked with Audrey, and I understand the proposed reduction. I think people should know that when I was hired, there were 2 retirements of Alice Burgoyne, and when I was hired for a 4-day-a-week job. So there was a cut that year in 2010 of a full day out of art. And then Lynn Clough retired, and she was a day plus, maybe a day and 3/4. So that was another. So they brought art to 5 days a week after the 2. They just had attrition with the 2 retirements. So just FYI, it would be the 3rd cut for art in the school, and it, you know, it's just a kind of a snipping away of all the kinds of things that I could do with. I mean, right now, we'll see how many extra spots open up from reductions. But anyways, I just wanted to let people know that it's been cut, and you might not know that.
Thank you very much, Audrey.
Thank you.
5.0 consent agenda. Is there need to pull anything out? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Director's comments? All right. 7.0 confirm next meeting dates. December 17th is another budget meeting here at 6:30. January 7th, we have a budget meeting at 6:30 here, and January 14th is our final budget hearing and approval at 6 o'clock here at CCS.
What were those last 2 dates?
January 7th and January 14th. The 7th is at 6:30, the 14th is at 6.
And what time is the December meeting?
6:30. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn? Second? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.